Hi, everybody. So today, joining me is Jen Ryan. I found Jen Ryan through Instagram because Jen very kindly shared her most recent successful IVF journey. And I was really intrigued by her story. So Jen, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
So what I'd love to ask you first really is, and we were talking off camera a little bit about it, this whole idea of belonging. Have you got a tribe? Who are they?
I was thinking about this. I know we talked about it, as you said, and I think I have a couple of tribes really. Mine are kind of divided into two different worlds, which is interesting, and it's something that's kind of come to the forefront for me since this pregnancy came, where, my tribe would have always been infertility, all those years of trying. Thankfully, it worked, and this pregnancy is our third baby. But since the first, then my other tribe is other parents, apart from family and friends. But just focusing on the tribe aspect, they're kind of two worlds for me that live together and mix in with each other, and both equally as supportive. I find, both can be equally as lonely as each other, but definitely as supportive. So that's what I'd say: parents and infertility.
And how do you do that juggle? Because that is a tough juggle, isn't it?
It is a tough juggle, but like one of the things that I find most bonding in the infertility world is the fact that it's a definite sense of everyone in it together. There's an instant understanding of each other because you don't have to explain situations. You just don't have to explain emotions. You don't have to explain the whys and the reasons why you're acting a certain way or feeling a certain way. And I found, when you're open with IVF, especially with family and those that are closest to you, they obviously care about you. And if they see you upset, they immediately want to comfort you. And when you're in that world, you're like, no, you don't really get it. It's not about that. It's very hard to explain it and describe it to other people. And people mean really well, but sometimes you'd be just like, just leave me alone. Whereas with the infertility tribe, there's none of that. You don't have, there's no expectations, just support. So to blend the two, it is kind of tricky. I'm very conscious of, showing pregnancy bumps on an Instagram story while also talking about infertility and dealing with sensitive topics. And people message me all the time, stuff that's happening in their lives and horrible things they're going through with their own treatment. And then, I wonder about the conflict of, is that insensitive of me to do those things? But for the most part, I find, well, firstly, people don't have to follow. People only follow what they want to see. But also, I think there's that bond within, you're happy for those who have been through the same thing as you. And I found that overwhelming. I actually spoke about it quite recently, and overwhelmingly, it was that it's not the same. It's not the same as tuning into a regular pregnancy account. And that's certainly how I felt at the time as well. I definitely withdrew from family, friends, social circles where it was discussions about babies and christenings and kids' birthday parties and stuff. But bizarrely, to me at the time, I felt I was okay with those that had been through infertility first. It was like this can work. This could be you as well. Whereas everyone else was so out of reach, I felt. So that's kind of how I do it. I just try and be as honest as I can, but being conscious of I wouldn't be gloaty or very conscious of the language used, for example, and gratitude.
I mean, it's like you're a beacon of hope. I see that with a few of the IVF accounts I'm on. People seem to love seeing the kids and everything. I remember sharing a photo of Sophie, one of my favorite ones, because she asked me to share it on her birthday, because I don't share. I haven't gone there yet with sharing her on my Instagram. So she's like, share that one, because you can't see my face, but it's my favorite photo of this mummy. And oh my God, the reaction I got to it was unreal. Particularly from my IVF ladies, as I call them.
It is, isn't it? And it's really comforting because, it's, as you said, the tribe, it is that sense of us all being together, even though everyone's experience is different. And unfortunately, some people are still trying to get to that positive line. But yeah, it's really empowering, I think.
Yeah. I like what you said there as well about not having to explain and no expectations, because I was we were saying earlier, I was doing my IVF. I finished in 2012, so it was pre-Instagram and there was no real tribe. But I discovered very late in the journey NISIG, the support group, and I'll never forget my first meeting. I'll never forget it. I thought it'd be a lot of people crying in a circle, so I was a bit like, oh, I don't know if this is great, because that wouldn't be me now. Oh my God, it was so positive and hopeful, and you didn't have to start from scratch. You know, like you said, with other people, got to give the context, and then they're asking all the questions, and you're like, oh, I don't want to explain it all again. And you just start from wherever you are when you're with them.
And it's just really gentle, like, you know, there's just, I was to say we were 2013 when we started, and it was 4 years prior to that trying, and I used to go into, you know, the usual kind of web forums, and all the acronyms used to frighten the life out of me. I didn't know what any of it meant, and I just hoped to God I'd never have to find out. So it was really daunting, and especially when it's just text on a page or a screen and there's no emotion or context really, or, you know, it's just very cold and scary looking. So
isn't it? I found the same.
Yeah, it is. You know, I found through family someone else. I only knew one other couple at the time who were open about the fact that they had done treatment, and she was fantastic. But that was it.
Yeah.
That was all. I hadn't come across like that in this thing. I hadn't even heard of them until I'd say maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so thank God for Instagram.
I know, right? Yeah. Because I think, I mean, that's what I actually want to ask you next. Tell me about your use of social media. What do you love about it, and what would you change?
What do I love about it? The sense of community. When I started, it was more, I mean, if you look back at my first Instagram pictures, it was like pictures of a mug or random stuff. But as I kind of got more into, actually I started first on my own blog, which when I started the treatment, or even just the run up for the treatment, it was my way of coping with it, just writing things down. It was like a diary, really. I didn't share it with anyone. I just created a little blog. It was in its own little corner, and I would just spill words out. I have hundreds of drafts that I typed up that I never even published, just to get stuff out. I found it really therapeutic, and eventually started to publish them. But like that, I still didn't really share it. But people would come along and every so often and find it. And then I thought, you know what? I found it really hard to find someone to talk to. So that's why we made it open. But also I'm the type of person that if I'm worried about something, I have to just get it out. I can't bottle it up. And I think that is quite helpful, because I know lots aren't like that. And I can only imagine that feels harder to have to try and process it yourself on your own. But then I started getting other people coming to me with their story, and it was so mutually beneficial, because, you know, they'd say to me, thank you so much for doing them. I'm like, but you're helping me just as much. You know, just being able to talk to somebody who understands it was amazing. And it kind of went from there then. My Instagram is mostly just me spamming the world with pictures of my children, but because who wouldn't want to see that? But I don't use the
children.
Pardon?
You're gorgeous children. Oh my God, I love them so much. I feel like I know them now. It's just so cute.
I know. And you know, sometimes the older guy now, he doesn't, you know, I'll ask them, can we do this or can I do that? I don't just do it, but he's withdrawing a lot more, and he'll say, no, thanks, ma'am. So that's fine. And I wouldn't do anything over
in the mornings.
Pardon?
Alex is still there to entertain me in the morning.
Alex
makes me laugh so much.
He's just
brilliant.
His imagination is amazing.
Oh.
He's Sophie the Invisible Unicorn. I have to dress her every day and bring her to the crash. Yeah, he's amazing. Yeah, I do look at them and wonder how did they get here? Yeah. You know, it does blow my mind a bit. But
I have this thing. I feel like I wished her into my life.
Yeah.
I know that sounds really soppy or something.
No, I totally
magical, but I just feel like I feel like I loved her into existence.
That's it. And it's so funny that you said that, because I was only having a chat this morning with somebody about their own, and she said to me, I can't decide when to go back and try and get the next embryo. And the exact words I said to her were actually, I think they nearly choose you. Like, you'll just know yourself. I just have this image of them waiting for the right time to be. It sounds mad, but I'm sure all the other infertility people will understand what we're talking about. And I hope it doesn't sound like, oh, well, it's easy for you to say when you have yours. I've been wishing mine here for so long. Like, you know, you don't want to be too, oh, look, we wish them they came true. Like it's clearly not as simple as that, but there is that feeling that they were there and they were ours. We just hadn't found them yet. That's definitely how I find it as well.
I don't know about you, but I would have been a very different mother if it happened for me first time around. And I don't know if better or worse, I don't believe in that, but I definitely learned patience that I never had.
Yeah.
which is useful with children. It's useful to have patience. And,
yes.
I didn't have any. I've been starting off. And I had no self-love and no self-worth, which isn't good when you've got children. You know, they need to see that. And I think Sophie has a better experience of me with me because my infertility made me work on stuff I had to work on. It shone a big light on the stuff that wasn't great in my life.
Absolutely. And another thing I get asked a lot is, why do I still talk about it when it was so long ago? And I said, well, it wasn't. It's always part of me. That is who I am now. It's just there. It's not that it's something that might have taken place a few years ago. It's always going to be there, and they're here because of it. I'm here because of it. So that's why. And again, for the people that are starting off and don't know where to go or who to talk to, or go in and see all those scary, even on the clinic websites, you see all the different treatments with no explanation as to what they are, you know. So that's why I do it. It's just, I really believe strongly in being as open as possible about it.
And I think, you know, there's so many things I want to ask you about that you said there, but let's start with the openness. So you said that you can't bottle things up, you have to get it out. Have you always been like that? Is that always been part of you?
Yeah, definitely. Just can't shut up. It's just how I process. I just have to kind of get the words out. It's like if they're stuck inside, it makes me feel worse and I catastrophize them more. Sometimes just saying things out loud or writing them down kind of rationalizes it a bit. Doesn't always make it easier, but it just kind of makes it a bit clearer for me. And I can, you know, make myself think, okay, is this me just overreacting a bit? But that's another thing that infertility teaches you, is to expect the worst. And you learn failure. You learn that this isn't going to work. You learn how things go wrong. And so it's just part and parcel of what you expect. And I find that spills into parenthood. Like when Rian, my first, was born, and I used to just panic at everything. I'm like, oh my God, he's a runny nose. That must mean this. And he cut his nail once and it was kind of sticking in. I was like, that's going to get infected. The blood's going to get infected. He's going to end up with sepsis and he's going to die. That's genuinely the train of thought that my brain will take me in. So like, I have to get these things out, and someone will go, get a grip, you know. And I really believe that comes from all the years of infertility. I'm not as bad now, I'm not as bad now, but it's still there. It's still there, absolutely.
You don't get as much time now to catastrophize, do you, as well? I find I'm too busy now, where I used to catastrophize a lot too. That was one of my...
Kind of. It depends on the situation. It depends on... Some things still frighten the life out of me, like random rashes appearing. You're like, what is that? Why are you here? So, but no, I have my husband is very rational in that sense, and he'll be like, Jen, relax. I have another friend, and she's a nurse, which helps because it makes it more believable. It comes to her. I'm like, okay, that's grand. Okay, it's fine.
And he's like, but I told you that, and you're like, yeah, I know, but I had to hear it from her.
Yeah, but obviously.
And tell me about your marriage during IVF, because again, you know, talking to so many people, you see it can affect marriages in very different ways. Were you guys on the same page the whole way through, or did you struggle with where you both were with the journey?
No, we were on the same page. I have a very clear memory of us sitting down when we knew we'd need IVF at this point, and we sat down and talked about various outcomes. What would we do in this scenario? What might we do in that? Because you'd never know until you were in it. And we kind of decided as much as we could in advance of how far we'd go with it. If it didn't work, what might we do next? We ruled out adoption. We just didn't feel like that was going to be for us. We felt if the IVF didn't work, surrogacy might be a route to investigate. But for the most part, we were absolutely on the same page. And he was very much aware that the physical side of it was all on me, and a lot of the emotional then, because of the meds and the side effects and everything. And he was really supportive in that sense. So he never, you know, he was as impatient as I was, but he never said, let's just do it this month. Come on, let's just do it. He'd always say, are you ready to start? Are you ready? So that helped a lot. We were with the whole way through. Although I had to do it physically, he was there with me for every injection, every follicle check, all the things.
Yeah.
And I think that was really important. But I think talking to each other and being aware of how the other is feeling, as hard as it is for the women, when there's men and they, like, I just imagine a sense of powerlessness.
Yeah.
And just this sense of having to just stand by and watch when someone you love is, you know, cocktailed on meds and injections and all those sorts of things. So I think talking to each other, if you can't talk to other people, talking to each other, but I definitely think an outlet for each person away from each other is also really important. Because although we're in it together, we're experiencing it from different angles. And he has to process different things than I might. So that's kind of, we were lucky in that sense, I think.
We have found our sense of humor really worked for us as well. We've both got very big sense of humor, and we find the funny in nearly every, in things that other people wouldn't find funny, we can find, you know, humor, dark humor, and that really helped us. Because I remember, I've told this so many times, but it's one of the funniest things I remember from the IVF. I hated the tiptoeing around me, that, oh, how are you? You know, that thing, I fucking hated it. It used to make my skin crawl, because I was grand, actually. I actually think the IVF drugs gave me drugs that I was missing, gave me hormones that I was missing in my body. So actually, during the time of injections, I'd be in great form, like, I'm feeling very healthy. Also, you know, you really look after yourself for that period of 6 weeks. So, you know,
and you're excited as well. You know, you're like, this might work, you know, so there's definitely positive aspects to it as well.
So the drugs didn't affect me at all. They actually probably made me better. So I remember somebody, I can't remember who it was doing the thing, and Dec knew how much it used to wind me up when people were like, you know, feeling I hate sympathy. I love empathy. I hate sympathy. And how are you in the drugs? And Dec went, she is doing great. The only problem is our balls are really itchy. And I remember the two of us like roaring laughing. This person just standing there going, what? Why are they laughing so hard? They're doing IVF and we were killing ourselves. And I was like, this is the funniest thing ever. And their reaction was like funnier to me.
Yeah, it is funny. And I remember one of the funny things that happened in ours was, you know, you take your trigger shot. After you've taken all the injections, you have to take something called a trigger shot, which gets ready for the eggs before they collect all the eggs. But you have to, the clinic will give you a very specific time that you have to take this injection. And ours was 11 p.m. on whatever night it was. And I went upstairs getting ready for bed, and I had all the bits, and they came in these little glass vials that you had to snap off the top, and a specific injection for it. But I think you had to mix one into the other. I can't really remember. But anyway, I was sitting watching, going, right, it's 2 minutes to 11. Like, and I'd be like, they said 11 p.m. So just at maybe 10 seconds to 11, I was like, oh my God, it's the wrong needle. And I've never seen him move as fast. He was up, he practically just slid down the banister. It was like something like a factor. Came back into the kitchen, got the thing, and took the stairs maybe in 2 strides. I was like, thank God. But the two of us again just laughed and laughed. It was like something like yeah. But we got the trigger shot. Like, yeah, like would it have mattered if it was 11:05? No. Like, anyway, yeah.
Oh, but it's funny, isn't it, though, the things that you do, and you're so focused on certain things because that is your route to getting your baby. So it's like, if they tell me 11, I'm damn well doing 11. Yeah,
I took it very seriously. I did it serious, like, but yeah, I did it to the letter, you know, just because you don't want to look back and go, it didn't work because I didn't do that.
No, right?
Yeah, and you'd beat yourself up with it.
How did you keep your mindset okay, or did you keep it okay? Particularly those 2-week waits are the really tough part.
Oh God, no, I definitely wasn't okay for any of the two, and I've done 4 2-week waits now. No, absolutely the worst part. I really struggle with them. And even the one I did there in July when I was recording myself as I was doing it, which at the time felt ridiculous. And I'm glad I did. But before I had done it, I was like, I'm going to do it every day. But I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I just couldn't bring myself to do anything other than what was absolutely necessary to function, which sounds quite dramatic. And again, it was in the middle of this really weird year where I couldn't see the people that I'd normally go to help me. You know, I was trying to work from home and I had the kids here. It was in the middle of the summer and I was trying not to cry around them. And it was really difficult. But I really find like that writing things down, even just the recording, just to, again, get the words out. the bits I did do, I found it helpful. Yeah, I would recommend it. Even if you don't share it or show the stuff to anybody, just do it and delete it if you have to. But I find it a great way to just process things.
And in general, you're very creative. So we said you work in IT, which doesn't feel like, I mean, I work in IT too, so it doesn't feel like the most creative, although I know IT is actually very creative for people who aren't in IT. It's actually very creative.
Creative whatsoever.
Yeah, I suppose we're very much software, so there's a lot of creativity banging around our place. But so there's the writing, the blogging, the art, and the photography, which is beautiful. So again, how did you end up in IT, considering you've got such a creative streak?
Well, to be honest with you, I ended up in IT because I didn't get enough points to do journalism. That's pretty much it.
Oh my God, I love this, because I talk to so many young people who are devastated with their points, and I'm like, don't worry about your points. Like, you'll get wherever you want to go, you'll get there. Like,
yeah, you will. And my dad was like, go back and repeat. I was like, no way.
Oh,
and like, yeah. I regret that now. But yeah, IT, I don't, like, if I'm honest, I don't love it.
Yeah.
But when we were trying to get pregnant, before we found out we needed IVF, I decided to learn photography. And I did like an online diploma course, and that was a great distraction. I needed a distraction. And then I just find that anything creative I can try, I love it. And I don't really care about the result.
Yeah.
Like even during lockdown, coping with the lockdown, I started doing baking every Sunday, and I take like a Great British Bake Off recipe and try and do it. And they were horrific, but the kids still ate them. But it was just the doing it, you know, and it was fun to do. And the painting, I'd always wanted to do art class, and I started going on a Wednesday evening about, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 years ago now. And I just loved it. It's just so relaxing. And like that, I don't care about it. I'm not doing it to be an artist. I don't do the photography to be a photographer. I just enjoy doing those sorts of things. And sometimes I'm good at them, and sometimes I'm really not. But they definitely help in lots of different ways. Yeah.
Your art is beautiful.
Thank you.
But I will say as well, something you said there, you know, about the whole waiting with IVF. I wasn't a child with hobbies. All I did was read, really. And I developed loads of hobbies during all those years of fertility treatment that I miss now because I've got a child and I can't do them anymore. But I couldn't recommend. One thing I often say as well to people who are waiting is find somewhere you can put those mothering instincts, because our need to mother has to go somewhere, right? So I grew vegetables, and I would put in my love, literally, I would put my love into those vegetables. Just, I wanted somewhere for it to go. And then the other thing I did, which I couldn't recommend highly enough, sorry everybody for the beautiful sunshine. I don't think you can see me, but you don't need to see me. You just need to see
giving you a lovely halo.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, look at me. Family tree. Honest to God, doing my family tree.
I'd love to do. I actually did a DNA test a few years ago. I find it fascinating. Just one thing about the creative thing though, and you know, just going back a bit to the mixture of motherhood and infertility, with the art class in particular, like when you do infertility and you do IVF and it works, there's this sense that you can't complain about motherhood being hard. Because,
or your children being annoying.
Anything. Yeah, even being pregnant at the start, and I was finding the nausea quite hard, and you know, you're like, to yourself, you're like, shut up, like, look what you've had to do to get to this point, so just shut up and get on with it and be grateful. But I found the transition into being a mother really hard, because I was working full time, and I felt I was lost and gone, and the art was really just something that was mine. It was me. Nobody was asking me for anything or demanding anything of me, you know. And I definitely think that, you know, even if you look at lockdown, how many people have gone back to things like gardening or baking or whatever it might be, because it's a coping mechanism. And I think you can apply that to any section that you're struggling with, no matter what it is, to find something that's just you and completely unrelated to whatever it is you're going through is huge. 100% thing.
I think you make a really good point there though, as well, about the not complaining, because I mean, we were talking earlier again, I had hypomesis all the way through till I had Sophie, and I was incredibly unwell at one point because I didn't tell people I was pregnant. 2 people told me they thought I had cancer because I'd gone that thin, and I was kind of a funny grey color because I was just vomiting all the time. I couldn't keep anything down. So when I told people I was pregnant, they were like, thank God, we actually thought you were genuinely, 2 people thought I was dying. And I just hadn't told them yet. Yeah. And it was that bad, but every day, and she's still in, well, she didn't know what she was. He is still in here because I'm vomiting. So I was thrilled, and I could feel her moving at 16 weeks because I was so skinny.
Wow.
The doctor said there's literally just no fat. That's why you can feel her so early. But it was funny. I didn't realize how much it affected me because I was being really, I'm just so happy to be pregnant. Yeah. Until we went again. We had a couple of embryos left. And I was actually freaked out about the thought of having a one and a bit year old and being that sick again. I actually was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I was a little bit panicked. Now, it didn't work out, but I was a little panicked at going down, being that sick again. When I got somebody small.
Oh, and I wasn't that sick on Alex. You know, again, we spoke before. I vomited for about 6 months, but I was never admitted to hospital. And deciding to do this embryo transfer was huge for me because of being sick for so long, and not just that, but the treatment itself. It took me about a year to decide whether we could do it or not. And you know, the clinic writing you have these embryos, pay us X amount of money to keep them stored. What do you want to do with your embryos? So there's you can't just move on from it. Plus I'm turning 40 next year, and for me personally, I just didn't want to be doing it past that age. Not that there's anything wrong with doing it past 40.
I hear you.
Just my own personal decision was I didn't want to. And so in the end, we'd actually started in March, but lockdown had other ideas. So it got cancelled then until the summer. But it's a huge part of it. It's not just as simple as, you know, off you go, skip along to the clinic. And to be honest with you, I said to Gavin at the start, you know, we've had our luck. There's no way this is going to work. And if I'm being completely honest, I was like, it'll be okay. It won't work anyway. I won't be sick. So I couldn't believe it when it did. We were just unbelievably lucky, just unbelievable. And I feel that gratitude every single day. And I know it might sound a bit hallmarky or whatever, but I really genuinely do, especially because I hear so often from people who aren't that lucky yet. And I really question, like, why is it so unfair? It's so unfair. And that's one of the hardest things about it. There's no control. You can do all the rules, do everything right, and then it just doesn't work. It's just so hard.
That was the hardest thing I found, actually. That was the biggest psychological thing I had to get my head around. And I think it was really good for me in the long run, and that I'm just very zen about everything now. But bloody hell, it was hard because I was an A plus B will get me to C. I was like, if I do this, because I'm a really hard worker, I work smart, and I always get what I want because I, you know. And then you're doing IVF and you're doing everything you're told. And again, I was back in the old internet Google days. So if they said give up cheese, I gave up cheese. If they said peas will work, I ate all the peas. So I was always doing some kind of fad, thinking that'll get me pregnant. And it doesn't, and it's very hard.
Yeah, it's impossible to understand it. But you can do nearly everything else in life. You could, I'm going to learn this, or I'm going to buy that, or I'm going to save up and work for this, or you put the work in and you'll get it, except for this sort of thing, you know, and not just this. Obviously, there's lots of different health related things, but it's a big part of trying to figure it out and accept it.
That's it, isn't it? The surrendering and accepting.
Yeah.
Oh, that took me so long. And like I say, now at the other side, part of me is glad I went through it all, because I think it's just helped me I think it's helped me become the person I am. I don't think I'd be who I am without having had that journey. But man, it was hard in the middle of it.
If I could wear an IVF badge, I would. I've said that before. I would, or a neon sign even. I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of it. But that is with the benefit and privilege of it having worked. So, you know, I'm very aware of that as well.
Yeah, and the whole thing I've gotten my head around recently, and again, this is Instagram. And one thing I love about Instagram is I'm getting educated about things in a very nice way, in a very, I suppose, inobtrusive way, I suppose. But secondary infertility, I had no clue how that affected people, because we had a couple of embryos left. We used them, they didn't work. And I think even more than my husband, I was like, okay, right, move on. Right, so now we can get our lives back, you know. I kind of had my head I'd got my head firmly around 1 kid is fine. Yes, I would have liked 2, 3, 4, but look, like you said earlier, we've had our luck, we're grand. So I kind of moved on pretty quickly. So I never experienced that secondary infertility, but I'm really valuing what I've learned about it lately, because again, with work, with my job, I had somebody come to me who's having secondary infertility. I was so glad I understood it, and I didn't have in my head what I probably would have had previously, which was like, oh, you've already got kids, like what do you, you know? And
absolutely. Yeah, I totally used to be like that too before. You know, if I just had one, then I'd never want anything else.
Yes.
Completely agree with that, but it's not the same thing at all. Like, you want each one as much as you wanted the first one. It makes it a little bit easier. You know, I'm going to be honest. The this third pregnancy, it's not as scary as the first, but you want it just as badly. Yeah, really and truly.
There's still a hole there that you need to fill with an individual little human.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I still get that, you know, that little heart skip if I hear of people just getting pregnant. Oh, you know, people say it all the time as they're entitled to say it. Not everybody has to be super conscious about me or how I'm feeling about it. People are entitled to shout from the rooftops their own experiences and everything. But I still feel that jolt of unfairness that other people can still just, let's have a baby, okay. With no complications, as it seems from the outside. I would never ever assume that everything's going as rosy as it seems, but just the unfairness of it. And even though we've been incredibly lucky, I still feel that unfairness that, you know, we have to do all this to get there, and so does lots of other people.
And the $1 million baby thing, you know, I really used to feel for people. Again, when we got involved with NISIC, we met obviously a lot of people who were going through it, and God, I feel for the people who haven't had a holiday for years, can't afford to go shopping with my friend, you know, all that kind of stuff. Again, we were lucky we didn't have that issue ourselves, but I really felt for people literally putting their lives on hold for a dream. You know, it's hard to imagine unless you've been through it. So again, it's great that you're out there and talking about it, Jen. I think it's so inspiring for people who who are facing down that journey and not knowing where to start. You know, I've directed people to your page to say, listen, Jen's got it all there. You know, if you want to find out what's going to happen, all there. It's a wonderful resource to have available for people.
I'm glad, and that's definitely been I was really nervous about putting it up on Instagram, because although I had documented the other ones through the blog, it's a lot less scary when you have a keyboard to hide behind. But when it was so open, I was nervous, but immediately glad that I did, based on the responses that I got. And just like that, this connection, and people seem to think that it's me doing things it's not, it's mutual. You know, you feel heard yourself. It's me telling the story, but when other people come back and say, I know what this is, I could have written this, or I could have said this, that's amazing, you know. And it really makes you feel, oh wow, it's not just me. Even though I'm vocal about it, it is also quite lonely. And there's downsides to being open about it as well. You know, there are downsides to that, but for the most part, it's been overwhelmingly positive.
What are the downsides that you've experienced?
Well, just people knowing a lot, you know, and when you're as open, and I don't mind, people can ask, there's nothing I won't talk about, don't really care. That's another thing, when you do IVF, your dignity is left at the door.
I know, right?
There's no shyness.
A little prude. I was one of these girls in school that couldn't change in front of other people. Like, I was really funny about my body. And now I remember going in to see one IVF doctor at one point. I think that's a bit better. One IVF doctor, and I started taking my trousers off, and he was like, wait, can we just talk first? And I was like, oh God, sorry. It's like, what do you like? I was like, I'm just so used to walking into an office and
the time I got to the labour on Rian, and they were like, is it okay? So I was like, honestly, there's not many people that hasn't seen things now, so we work away. But you know, when you're open about it, you do get a lot of questions, and you're not always in the mood to talk about it. Because I'm open about it doesn't mean I want to always go into it. But I will, you know when people are being genuine and when people are being nosy, and there's a difference. But sometimes the expectation, as I said to you earlier on, when I documented it this year, I actually delayed it by 2 weeks, just so that I could process.
That was very clever.
Well, I just didn't feel that I just didn't think I'd be able to cope mentally and emotionally over those 2 weeks. if I had people asking me questions, because that's one of the big things I found difficult when you're being open about it, is people saying, how are you getting on today? How do you feel today? Does it feel any different? Do you think you might be pregnant? Or even saying helpful things like, oh, I have a great feeling about this for you. To me, that's not helpful. But people used to say to me all the time, oh, you're too negative, Jen. You have to think positive. That's one of my big things is, no, I do not have to think positive. I have to think realistically. I have to allow the negative thoughts and process them just as much as the positive ones, because I just wouldn't cope otherwise. The lowest point for me over the whole 10 years, more or less, of the whole thing was when we had started our IVF. And I thought, this is going to be the answer to all our prayers now. After years of trying, we got to the clinic and I started the meds and I went in for the first follicle check. And she said, I'm sorry, it's not working. We'll have to do this round. And we hadn't even got to the stage of getting eggs or embryos or anything like that. But I was up so high that the crash was just so much harder and I was devastated. But now I'm glad it happened now, because it taught me a new way to deal with the treatment. And rather than trying to let myself run away with, I was thinking baby names. I was gone. So when we came back and we started again, I only let myself think in little sections. I'm just going to do the injections. I'm just going to get to this point. I'm just going to get to this point. And it made it much more manageable. But when I did it this summer, we did an embryo transfer this summer, so it wasn't full IVF. I had to delay it, and I'm glad I did. But I didn't want to deceive people. I made it clear, or I hope I made it clear, that it was 2 weeks ahead of the time, and I dated the videos that I was putting up. But I wouldn't have been able to do it live. I just wouldn't have had the capacity to deal with everyone else's emotion on top of my own. That's ultimately what it is.
I agree with you. I found that hard as well, because I was really open, but I used to message people going, I just don't want to talk about it today, because some days I was absolutely fine, and then somebody would burst me bubble by going, oh, again, the sympathy. I'd be like, I was actually grand and didn't mention it.
And even like the embryo transfer that we did that didn't work, my immediate family and my sisters were their immediate responses to comfort found it worse. I was like, no, please, just, without saying go away, but that's ultimately what I wanted. I just couldn't, because if you're sitting there devastated and someone else is devastated for you, genuinely, you'll find yourself going, oh, look, it's not as bad as that, at least, and you'll start telling them things to help them feel better. And it just adds another layer and another layer. And I just said, no, I can't. Kind of similar to, at the time, hearing pregnancy announcements, something else I spoke about recently, that a lot of people identified with, when you're in that bubble of trying to get pregnant or doing treatment, and someone bounces into the room and goes, surprise, and just having to plaster that smile in your face is just horrible. And the guilt that comes with it, because you're like, you must be a horrible person if you can't be happy for your sister or your friend, and all you want to do is cry. But actually all you want to do is just process the stuff so that you can be happy for them. Big thing, so there's so many different areas and side effects and things that you just don't think about up front until they're actually in your face. So they're the sorts of things that I want to just kind of normalize it. Like, you don't feel guilty for feeling that way. Don't think that you have to think positive and all that crap. And it is a load of crap. Think negative if you want to think negative. That's how you're thinking. Go with it. Do what you have to do to kind of cope with it.
If you could go back to yourself before all of this IVF treatment started, is there anything you'd say to yourself? Any advice you'd give yourself now with all this wonderful hindsight?
I don't think so, no, to be honest with you. I think I dealt with it the best way I could at the time. I'd probably tell myself not to be as hard on myself. I used to blame myself a lot, and at the very start I used to have guilt about my husband. I used to think things like, if he'd married someone else, he'd probably have kids by now, and I'm the reason he doesn't have children, that sort of thing. But I mean, I think that's normal. You have to, if I could go back, you do. I'd probably sit beside myself and say, it's not your fault. It's a disability. It's a disability, the same way any other aspect of health is a disability. maybe that's it. But with regards to the treatment itself, I couldn't change anything. We've just been so lucky. So lucky. I still can't quite believe how lucky. So, but even now, I'm only halfway through this pregnancy and I'm still half expecting something to jump out and tell us, gotcha.
I know, my husband was like that actually. When I was pregnant with Sophie, he found it very hard to just get into it because he was so scared, because we'd had a miscarriage before we started doing all the IVF treatment, and he was just so nervous. He just wrapped me in cotton wool, and he was kind of happy as well that I was getting sick all the time, because again, he was like, yes, she's so pregnant.
Yeah, I know, as bad as
it is. And the odd day that you feel well, you're like, fuck, I'm so pregnant.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a real catch-22. You'd be like, oh my God, where's the nausea? Oh my God, something's wrong. Yeah, totally. And then it comes back, you're like, oh Christ.
I know, crap. But yes, I know, it's weird, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
How has lockdown changed you? Has it changed you at all?
It's given me a much better appreciation for the things that I have, things that I thought I needed or wanted, or points that I had to get to in life in order to feel validated or happier. Just bringing everything back to the absolute basics and getting to spend time with kids. I live in Leash and my office is in Dublin, so it'd be an hour on the train, a little bit more train station to work. So suddenly I'm working from home and I finish work at 4:30 and I have 2 hours extra every day. I'm here when they wake up in the morning. And that was a big part of deciding to try it again, because I moved to part-time work last year, but up to that, working the 5 days and only seeing the kids for maybe an hour, half an hour in the evenings. I was a lot of like, what am I doing?
Yeah, I hear you.
But it is definitely, and I think everyone is the same. I think it has definitely taught lots of us similar things. I'm happier, I think, as bad as it sounds in some ways. I'm definitely happier with the balance that I have in life. Slightly terrified of how I'm going to do it with 3.
Yeah.
Try not to think about that.
It is a bit scary, isn't it? Because I was saying that to my husband and the people in work, and we've now changed to a remote first workforce. So even when COVID's over, it'll be up to you. If you want to work from home, you can work from home.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
Yes, we're putting into place like a lot of supports, making sure our policies are correct for that, and making sure
any job going there, let me know.
I'm always looking for IT people, Jesus. But I said to my fellow exec team, I was like, when I think about going back to normal, I actually get a bit panicky. But I didn't realize how stressful it was until I got off that crazy, because I'm also the same as you. I'm in Kildare and I commute over to Sandyford, and the amount of time in the car every day is just a waste of time. And I just thought I was rushing late all the time, tired all the time. It's unreal. And I've been able to do the toughest parts of my job from this room, and do it sensitively from this room. So like, if you can do that, the really tough bits this year from,
and it's kind of tricky now, because because I work part-time and having 3 children, it's really brought into focus. I would more or less just be paying for the childcare of 3, but then the ultimate fear of what do I do if I don't have a job, and it's all very well for the first few years, but then what do I do? And again, coming back to that sense of identity of well, I have a career and it's something I've always had, and I've earned my own money, and it's bringing up all these questions, all these kind of grown-up questions that I never thought I'd have to deal with. But one thing I have learned again from COVID is like, try not to let myself worry about things that haven't even happened yet. Just get this thing done first, and then things have a way of working out, I find. And if I have to eat beans and toast forever, then so be it. Might lose a few bits.
But you're right. I mean, there is no point worrying, but it's something I'm really interested in. Again, I'm lucky I work in a company where we're really open to all this kind of stuff, but I'm currently reading the Sheryl Sandberg book, Lean In, and it's a fascinating book around the way we as mothers think about life, and how a bit fucked up our thinking is, that we're sort of blaming the patriarchy, but actually a lot of it comes back to our expectations of ourselves and the stuff we tell ourselves, and stuff we tell ourselves we have to do, and where we don't challenge
unconscious bias is a topic I'm so interested in, because it's so constantly surprising, and in so many different ways, and I'm constantly learning about myself while I'm learning about unconscious bias. I actually have stuff on my Instagram this morning about it.
I saw that, yeah.
Side of things, it's unbelievable. But they did a big thing in it in our office about 2 years ago, and I would have said, I would never judge someone on this, that, or the other. And I was like, oh my God, I totally do.
Yeah.
You know, and I was interviewing somebody last year for a job on our IT help desk. And this person came in and they were, you know, I'd say maybe 50s or 60s. And my immediate thought was, no. But then I was like, oh my God, why not? I would have been sit there going, how dare you judge someone on this? And you can't discriminate about that. And
right.
it's all just so, and even with children, with regards to gender and gender stereotyping and what kids should or shouldn't play with. And it drives me out. I'm very much feminist. Probably because I spent years in an industry that's male dominant. But it's such a fascinating topic, but one we all have in us, even when we think we don't.
Yeah.
So it's huge. But like, I think when you just recognize it and even just question it, is this that, or is this really what you think, or what you think you should think? And you know, it's really interesting.
I think we worry that we're going to discover we're a bad person with some of this stuff that's this unconscious bias, and I think that's why a lot of us don't want to go there, because like, oh shit, man, I'm not a racist. And
but even coming back to women in the workplace, though, you know, as you said, you think it's the patriarchy. It's not. I worked, as we said before we started recording, I was sick constantly on my pregnancy, but I still went in because I thought I had to upkeep the same level of output while growing a whole human as the men sitting around me. And that wasn't them putting that on me. That was all me. Yeah.
And Cheryl says that a lot. She talks about, she's lots of examples where she made assumptions, and then when she checked into them, she was like, oh, I didn't actually have to do that. That was me. That wasn't anybody else.
I must read that book. Yeah, I must read it.
Very, very good. It's very easy read as well, if you know what I mean. It's a nice read. It's not heavy at all. It's very enjoyable. But there's so many aha moments in it. There's so many great statistics. And it really interests me because I've been very lucky in my career. I've always worked with amazing men. In fact, I don't think I'd have Sophie without the male bosses I had in my last company. And I think I talked about that in one of my blogs. They gave me more than I even thought. I didn't even think to ask for stuff that they gave me. They insisted on time off. They insisted that I take it easy. But then they also saw me knocking out the emails at 11 o'clock when I was informed. You know what I mean? Like, so I suppose I always say to people, like, bring your best self to work, and then you never know what you'll get away with once you're bringing your best self, you know?
That's it. Yeah, that's it. I remember having a mortifying. Now, in fairness, over lockdown, my boss has been really great. You know, I have to collect kids and do all that. And he's like, do what you need to do and it's fine. But I remember when I started the IVF and I had the most mortifying conversation, and I had to go in and tell him, you know, my appointment, I have an upcoming appointment. I told him it was for IVF. And he was like, well, what date would we be starting? And I said, well, I don't know yet, because I'm 6 to 8 for your period start. And he said, why can't they just give you a date? And I was like, well, it depends on like certain things. And he was like, what do you mean? Why can't? And it just kept going on, and I was just getting redder and redder and redder. And when the penny dropped with him, he was like, okay, Grant, yeah, no problem. Just let me know. No problem.
Here's a website I need you to Google. So if you do that.
Women do this sometimes. Every month this happens. I was like, please explain it to you. But yeah, there's lots of things. Yes, I would have loved another girl on the team. But there's another girl she's on our help desk now, which is definitely, so I have some backup. But for years it was just me.
I know, and I'm lucky. I was the only female on our senior team for years, but again, worked with the most modern men, like it was no issue. And now we're equal. Now there's 4 and 4, which is amazing. But it was never because there was any sexism. It just was that the women they just weren't available. They weren't in the.
And that's the other thing, you know, with the interviews I mentioned there for last year, I didn't get one female applicant.
Yes, we had to go searching for female applicants, which again is a little bit bias. We shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be, you know, pushing the men out for us, but you know, we do want to try and make sure that there are women applying for our roles. So we're going to do a bit of work on that next year. We've got some ideas about how we can make sure that you know, we're attracting women to our workplace, and I think the remote first working is going to help us with that.
100%
flexibility for the fellas, and you know, I mean, again, we're a young company, so we're full of new men who want to be with their kids.
Yeah.
It's perfectly fine, you know.
Yeah.
But it's a really interesting topic, you know. And one I've always got to be aware of that I'm so lucky about when I'm like, oh, you should just do this, just do that, and then people are like, it's not how it works in my place.
Not the same, yeah, same. But yeah, it is. I find it really interesting as well.
Yeah. So have you any guilty pleasures, Jen?
Oh my God, where do I start?
Great. I love this because some people go, I don't believe in guilty pleasures. I'm like, well, come on, if you had one, what is it?
Pleasures, but would I say they're guilty? Probably not. I love, where do I start? Cheesy music. And actually over lockdown, I found myself regressing a lot to nostalgia.
Yeah.
You know, back to the Today FM have a digital 90s and 80s station where they just play 80s and 90s. I think they have a 2000s one as well, but for some reason I can't get that. And there's no ads, so it's just cheese. My children think that, you know, Wham is of the day.
Love Wham so much.
Who doesn't love Wham?
No, well, I'm a bit older than you, so I think you know, there's a, you know, even 5, 6, 7 years makes a big difference on the musical taste we would have had as teenagers.
Yeah.
But I was an original Wham fan. Like I remember their first appearance on a Saturday morning TV show.
Okay, no. Yeah, you must be ancient then. No,
ancient. I married a Morton Harkett lookalike. I remember Aha's first appearance on a Saturday morning TV show and falling in love with Morton Harkett. No. And then I married a lookalike.
Well, that's cool, but mine would have been more like, you know, Dairy Girls. We'd be watching Dairy Girls, and like I'm of that era. Like we had a green kitchen even when I was that age, and I loved Take That and all that sort of stuff. But you know, my mom would have always had a radio on, so I know all the 80s stuff. So it was all that. So I love all that sort of stuff. I don't know any. I know I was about to say I'm 90 now myself, but I don't know much about the newer stuff. What else? I love Strictly Come Dance. Saturday night is a bath, clean pajamas, fresh bed covers, Strictly, a Guinness, which I can't have now. It's the only thing I crave in pregnancy is Guinness.
Yeah. Remember, well, again, if we were back in the old days, Jen, they'd be like, have that.
Yeah, they used to give it to pregnant mothers.
Yeah, the iron, you know.
Damn political correctness.
Damn it. Oh, we're obsessed with Strictly here. Obsessed.
Oh, I love it. I love Bill Bailey. It's amazing.
I cannot get over him. I was expecting not to like him, and now I'm like, I kind of love him.
Oh, he's brilliant. I love it. Yeah, it's a pity it's short this year, but I was so glad it was on.
Bit of normality, and again with the Bake Off as well. It's just lovely TV, isn't it?
Yeah, just comfort. Yeah, it's that nostalgia kind of thing again. I think it's just comforting.
Yeah. And I think you're a reader as well, aren't you?
Yeah, well, I was.
Yeah, I was going to say, pregnancy ruins that, doesn't it? Where's my concentration span? Hello?
Yeah, no, I do. I love it, yeah.
And do you have a favourite book or a book you would recommend to everybody to read?
I think kind of like the music, when you kind of fall back to the old comforts. Maeve Binchy, I just adore her stuff. And she actually has quite a strong thread of feminism going through her books, which I really like, but only kind of, I listened to a podcast, I think it's called the Irish Women's Podcast. And they talked about her books. And I was like, oh my God, yes. How come I never saw that? But I love her stuff.
It's like getting into a war bed, isn't it? Really
good. And I just love it. Like the Glass Lake is one of my favorites. And
I love that one.
I just love all them.
I liked her earlier stuff a lot more, but then
me too.
It was the first adult books I was allowed to read. My mom let me read them when I was, I don't know, very young teenage years. I was allowed to read. So they have a very nostalgic, thing.
Yeah, absolutely. There's another book I love as well, and I reread it every so often. It's called A Tree Grows in Brooklyn.
I've never read that one. I have to read it.
Yeah, I can't remember the author's name now. It's set in New York in the early 1900s. And it's just the view of the world from this little girl. Her dad is alcoholic. They're not living in they'd be living in tenants kind of houses and stuff. But I'm crap at selling things. And really boring.
Just read it. Just read it.
It's just loved her perspective, and it just follows her as she grows up and just achieves more than anyone ever thought she would. It's a brilliant book. It's lovely.
Read it.
Yeah, I'd really recommend it now.
Is it suitable for children? Is it a kid's book? Like
no,
it's not. To my daughter, and she's obsessed.
What age is she?
She's 8. She's got quite advanced reading age for 8, but I'm reading Anne of Avonlea to her, and obsessed. She is obsessed.
I don't know if I think it might be a bit, I think she might be a bit young yet, but maybe just, there's a lot of references to alcoholism. I don't think there's any sex or anything in it, but I don't know, maybe read it yourself first. I probably would screen it first. Yeah. But definitely when she's a bit older, it's great from a feminist point of view, and one of my favorites. I love that book.
Oh, lovely. And have you binged any TV over lockdown that you'd recommend?
Gilmore Girls.
Never seen an episode.
What?
I know, right?
Oh my God. I watched it when it was on first, and then rewatched it again over lockdown. It's like a Maeve Binchy hug. It's lovely. Why haven't you watched it?
I don't know. It just passed me by. It's one of those things I don't know.
I don't know if we can be friends, Stephanie.
I've got to fix this now, Jen.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
If you're feeling vulnerable, what do you do?
If I'm feeling vulnerable, what do I do? Talk to someone. Yeah, talk to somebody. I've maybe 4 or 5. Everybody has somebody go to for this scenario, that scenario, or whatever. But there's 2 or 3 or 4 that I would go for any scenario, and I would just bounce off those people. Really, that's what I do. Or obviously my husband.
Yeah. Sorry, forgetting about you. Oh.
He tends to anticipate stuff like that, and he's great. But definitely talking is my thing. That's my coping mechanism. Or being on my own. Sometimes I just have to be on my own for a little while. Even if it's half an hour in a day, I'll just throw the kids in front of the Netflix and just go upstairs with a cup of tea and just not talk or do anything. Just be on my own.
Bliss, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my God, amazing. But some people's worst nightmare. Some people don't.
I know. But I think if you're a very sociable person, and we seem very like in that way, and that we're very open and very chatty, there's also that other side of me that, again, like you, I just like quietness.
Yeah, just not having anyone asking things of you, or just even if it's small talk, you're like, it just takes effort. Today I just want to be on my own for a little while. So, that's what I do. I try and rationalize. If I'm feeling vulnerable, I'll try and rationalize. That's just something I've learned. Again, I suppose from the IVF.
I mean, can you ever be more vulnerable when you're doing IVF?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And if you need to be brave, where do you go and what do you do?
If I need to be brave, that's something. I'm kind of a practical kind of a person. I'm a kind of a just get on with it. Get your head down. And because I try not to think too far ahead of situations, I tend to just do whatever's needed to be done, and it's afterwards I'll sit back and go, oh, did that just happen? Or thankfully I've never been in a situation that I think I had to be really brave for, so it's mostly just me imagining what I would do. But I'd imagine I'd try and look at it as logically as possible. Like maybe that's the IT side of it coming out, looking at things as logically as I can, and figuring out my way through it. But my brain definitely tends to catastrophize, so again, it's bringing it back in and learning how to kind of recognize when that's happening. I find the Blind Boy podcast brilliant for that. I learned a lot. Do you listen to him?
I don't, and I must do, because I've heard so many recommendations.
Oh, it's amazing. He talks a lot about mental health and CBT, and how to not catastrophize. And he did actually write this one down. He did an amazing episode. It's called, he has these random names on his episodes, but he calls it Creaking Ditch Pigeon. People are like, I'm not listening to that. It's nothing to do with pigeons, but it's about something called transactional analysis. And he talks about why we are the way we are. If you're in a situation where someone's being quite confrontational, and as you're walking away, you think to yourself, why didn't I say that? Or why didn't I do this? It's a real insight into why you didn't. Things you learn from up to age 5, how you see your parents behaving, how they behave towards you. It's honestly fascinating, and I learned a lot from that. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's a couple of years.
One thing that really changed how I interact with people, again, particularly in work, is I had a coach last year, and he said to me, what happens when you speak your truth? And I went, oh, that's interesting. And I started being a lot more verbal. Like, I'm a very verbal person anyway, don't get me wrong. And maybe nobody noticed a difference, but there were things that I would fundamentally disagree with. And when I thought of it as just speaking my truth, things come out much calmer, much more rational, much more factual than just, I just disagree with it and having an argy-bargy with somebody. And oh my God, I felt it really changed the way
Do you not think that is something that you kind of, it comes with as you get older? You know, you have to not care about what people think. As long as you're not being offensive, to not care about what people think of you. And I think that's something that doesn't just happen. You have to learn that as well. But I think that's a great way of looking at it.
The way he said it to me, I was like, and then I tried it in a meeting. And I was like, man, I said things in that meeting that I normally would have said maybe differently, or not as strongly, or not being as clear, that I fundamentally do not agree with this. And then as well, you got to think about it. You know, I'm an exec level. I'm kind of paid to have opinions, so like, and have them, like, you know, once they're backed up with something, and you know, not rude. But I just love the way he said it to me, because it just seemed to unclick something, you know, in my brain. And yeah, I agree with you. I have to say, my 40s. I wish I looked, when I went back to my 20s, I wish I looked like that with this brain that I've got now. Man, that would have been powerful. Would have ruled the world, Jen.
Because I'm a bit like, oh my God, I'm about to be 40.
Best thing ever.
Is it good?
Best time of my life ever. I'm 47 now, and oh my God, my 40s would be
47.
Thank you. The filter's good on Zoom. If you saw me in real life, you'd be like, who's that hag? But no, I genuinely think my 40s have been wonderful, just wonderful.
Oh, that's good.
And now I'm like, 50s are going to be even better. Like,
well, yeah, well, that's a great way, because I'd be like, oh my God, when this one's 10, I'll be 50. Going, oh my God.
I'm the oldest mum in the school, and it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I'm one of the oldest as it is now as well, but that doesn't necessarily bother. Look, it doesn't really bother me, but it's just like, how? I still think I'm 25.
Well, I'm probably one of the most immature. Like, let's put it that way. You know, I like to have a laugh. Like, I don't take myself very seriously.
That brings freedom that I didn't have in my 20s.
Definitely. It's a great space to be in your 40s. So I think you're going to really enjoy it.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah. And I didn't celebrate my 40s because I just had a failed IVF, and Sophie was tiny, and I just started a new job. My job I'm in now. So my 50s, I'm going to have a huge party.
Yeah. I'm hoping we can do something for ours. COVID looks like it might put a stop to that too. But my husband was 40 in September. We didn't get to do anything there. Oh no, actually he's 41. That was last year.
Oh man. Actually, my husband turned 50 just before COVID. And I convinced him to have a huge party. I said, let's just have some fun and invite everybody you want. Instead of going, will I, won't I? Just invite them. And we had the best night ever. And now we look back and go, wasn't that amazing? Because we haven't seen most of those people. It was January. It was the end of January. And then COVID hit in March.
It is amazing. The things we take for granted.
Awesome. Such a good night. So we said, now for Sophie's communion, if we can, we're going to have a great party. Because why not? Like,
absolutely. I think
everybody in the house. Blow out, like, Jen, it has been a thrill to talk to you today. Thank you so much. I think so many people, I think they're going to get great stuff out of this. Just to finish off, if there's somebody watching this who's in the whole world of pain right now, is there anything you can say to them that might help them move forward?
I would say my best piece of advice would be to not let people tell you to be positive all the time. I think it's really important to not block out things that you don't want to happen. One thing you'll learn very quickly is that there's no guarantees. You can follow the rules, and the clinic will, give you their stats and say they'll do their best, but they won't make any promises either. So to try and let yourself deal with it as you need to deal with it, and not how you think you should be dealing with it. Talk to people about it. Get the thoughts out, whatever way it is that you want to do that. That would really be my best piece of advice. Try not to overthink, which coming from me, but just break it up into small pieces, and it's much more doable that way. It's less daunting. And be open, ask questions. Go to your clinic, ask the questions. There's this weird sense when you get to a clinic that you just have to kind of agree and, oh yes sir, no sir, or whatever. No, you're their client. You're paying them an absolute fortune. Ask them everything. Ask them why. Get them to show you everything, you know, don't just accept and be 100% comfortable with the clinic that you've chosen. I think that's really, really important. You know, you want to make sure that you're comfortable with everything that's going to happen, so you can't turn around and blame yourself for something that wasn't your fault in the first place. I think that's probably what I'd say.
That's great advice. It's really great advice.
Thanks.
Jen, thank you so much for today.
Thank
I really
you,
appreciate
Stephanie.
it. And guys, underneath our video here will be Jen's blog that you can get her on, and also her Instagram address. So do go and check her out.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Bye.